It's been happening for hundreds of years. Credit expands, asset prices go up, wages go up, expectations go up. Everybody's really happy for a while, and then suddenly something goes wrong, and it just pops.
People always tell themselves this time is different. The underlying mechanisms are not different at all.
You know, economists became very convinced that markets were mechanical, that they behaved according to normal distributions and you could calculate what was going to happen.
Although it was in fact perfectly obvious that the new economy was a bubble, the view was that markets were efficient and therefore you couldn't say that.
They blindsided themselves to the role of rising debt in funding what is really the biggest Ponzi scheme in human history, which is what we've been through in the last 20 years.
One of the remarkable things about the period before 2007 was that people had blind faith in many institutions and techniques, and suddenly, dramatically, in 2007 and 2008, that faith and credit markets cracked.
Now we really understand much more that the failings of the markets are more pervasive, deeper, more worrisome. Markets are often not stable. They often don't produce full employment. Right now, 1 out of 6 Americans who would like a full-time job can't get one.
The issue is not simply that Wall Street blew up and we needed to restore those banks to health. The issue is that many people lost their jobs, and that's a fantastically high cost. We need to figure out much better ways of dealing with that.
So there's a man. He's definitely a man, and he's really smart, and he knows exactly what he wants at any point in time. He can decide whether he wants to work or not work, spend, save, all these things. And what we do is we replicate that man, we clone him 10,000 times. And we call this guy the representative agent. The aggregation of all of these individuals makes up a model of the macroeconomy. This is, in a very caricatured way, what's called dynamic stochastic general equilibrium. This is the dominant modeling metaphor in economics at the moment.
Those models were useful benchmarks, but they obviously were not the right way to think about what's happening in a banking crisis where so many of those assumptions are violated.
Neoclassical economics is a way of thinking about the world that is rather helpful in relation to some problems. What the mistake is to think that it's the only way of thinking about any economic problem.
Not everybody is driven by rational desires to maximize rewards in quite the way that economists expect. Non-financial rewards may turn out to be very important.
It's not that human beings are irrational, it's that they're human and they make judgments and they don't know what's going to happen next and they're adaptive. Emotion plays a part in that, or at least you could call it gut feelings. In most matters with financial assets, there are several conceivably perfectly reasonable outcomes, and so choosing which one, it's not irrational. You go on your gut feelings, which is the only way to do it.
Neoclassical theory just assumed that demand was equal to supply. And one aspect of demand equal to supply was demand for labor was equal to the supply of labor, that is, no unemployment.
I call it the pirate obsession of economics. They love X marks the spot, So they have intersecting supply and demand curves for individual market. But because they started from the point of view of modelling the system in equilibrium, they have never quite broken out of that mindset. Of course, when you try to model financial instability in equilibrium, it's really hard. The reason is it can't happen.
It's something that's very anti-scientific actually, because in the 1970s, the 1980s, a lot of work was done to say, well look, you can't actually attain an equilibrium. You can get arbitrarily close, but you won't really get there.
Economic theory gives what appears to be a simple, plausible, complete explanation for capitalism. It all seems to hang together. Trouble is, it's wrong. We don't live in an economy like that. We live in an economy which has credit in it.
What is important, I think, to understand about market economies is that they have financial sectors which generate instability. And that's because they generate credit and debt, which, as far as the real sector is concerned, comes out of nothing. And that's something that doesn't really sit well in the structure of DSGE models and of equilibrium models in general.
The situation before 2007 was a bit like the medieval Christian church, in that you had financial priests speaking a language that almost no one else understood, and above all else they created this overwhelming sense of confidence that this new priesthood, these economists and bankers, understood the world and could forecast where it was going, and the rest of us had to sit there dumbly and just accept that.
The problem is, in doing that, they've also had the ability to, and the funds, to capture large sections of the American political system to make sure that their whims are catered to. And in my opinion, that's wrong.
One of the things that I find is that the credit crisis is always preceded by deregulation, which means that banks are no longer regulated by the government, by the monetary authorities.
We've had a massive corporate governance failure, and some people have grown to be extraordinarily rich as a result of that.
I think there is an urgent need right now for economists to do what I call silo bust, to get out of their silos, their academic silos and their institutional silos and their mental silos, and actually try and interact with and learn from other disciplines.
It's important that we work with sociologists, we work with historians, we work with neuroscientists, we work with that broader group of people, because we're trying to analyze fairly complex behaviors, and very often these people have insights that we don't have.
You know, economists can stick to being economists, but interface with people from other disciplines in a serious way.
But most of all, economists need to be humble, because unless they recognize that they have been preaching a set of convictions and ideas with far too much arrogance in recent years, there is a danger that their very valuable aspects in the discipline will end up getting ignored.
We have to go back and point and build a new economics starting from a correct foundation, which can then handle the aggregation or handle the social level that neoclassical economics can only get to by pretending we're all clones of each other.
Part of the issue is going to be some tweaking, and part of it is going to be realizing when you can't tweak anymore and you need to move to the next, some next paradigm.